Mariah Johnson woke up before sunrise in the quiet house near the edge of the military base. Soft light filtered through the curtains as she stretched and slipped on her shoes. She could hear Ranger's low whine by the door and Nova's gentle paw taps on the wooden floor. Her 2 military service dogs waited patiently, their polished collars glinting in the morning glow. Mariah smiled and patted the side of her bed. "Ready?" she whispered. Ranger let out a small bark and Nova wagged her tail. Her family had moved to this small town only a week ago. Her parents, both veterans, had taken new jobs at the base hospital. Mariah missed her old school, her friends and the crowds in the city park where she used to play. The new town felt empty at first, its streets lined with neat houses and trimmed lawns, but so few people filled them. She tried to keep her hopes up. A fresh start could bring something good. In the kitchen, her mother set down a plate of warm pancakes. The golden syrup dripped down the stack in thick lines. Her father poured orange juice into a tall glass. He ruffled Mariah's hair with a proud smile. "Big day?" he asked. Mariah nodded, her stomach fluttering. She felt both nervous and excited. The dog sat quietly by her chair, eyes bright and ears alert. Her mother reached under the table and slipped Mariah a small note. In careful handwriting it read, "Be yourself. You are enough." Mariah's chest warmed at the words. The morning air was cool as they walked the short path to the car. Ranger and Nova marched at Mariah's side, heads held high. Their strong, steady steps made Mariah feel safer. Other homeowners in the neighborhood waved politely as they passed. A few children peered at the dogs from behind curtains. Mariah clutched the dogs' leashes, her knuckles white, but inside she felt a spark of confidence. At the middle school, the parking lot was full of buses and parents saying goodbye. Mariah's heart beat faster when she saw the brick building, with its tall windows and green doors. A bell rang, sharp and final. She took a deep breath and led Ranger and Nova up to the entrance. A security guard nodded at the dogs' official vests. "Good morning, folks," he said kindly. Mariah returned his wave and stepped inside. The hallway buzzed with students. Lockers slammed, shoes scuffed on the linoleum, voices rose and fell. Mariah's chest tightened as 2 girls passed her, whispering and giggling. She kept her head down and slipped Ranger's leash hand from one to the other, trying to steady her voice. "Find my locker," she whispered to herself. Her parents had labeled the locker with bright name tags. Mariah J. and a small paw print symbol. She twisted the combination lock and pulled the door open. Inside were her books, neatly stacked, and a photo of her old friends taped to the back wall. At recess, Mariah carried Ranger and Nova outside through a side door. The courtyard was wide and open, with benches and a few tall trees. A group of girls skipped rope under one tree. A boy tossed a football near a bench where 2 friends laughed at their phones. Mariah picked a spot under the shade and set down her backpack. Ranger settled beside her, Nova on the other side. Mariah knelt and scratched behind Ranger's ears. His fur was soft and warm. She tried to join the jump rope game. "Can I play?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The girls looked up. Their jump rope stopped midair. One girl frowned and stepped back. The other 2 exchanged glances. They didn't answer. Mariah's cheeks burned. She stood there, frozen. Ranger nudged her hand gently, as if asking if she wanted to leave. Mariah shook her head and sat back down, trying to hide her disappointment. Across the courtyard, a trio of older students watched her. They leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Their voices drifted over when they laughed. Mariah couldn't make out the words, but she knew they were talking about her. Her stomach twisted. She remembered her mother's note. You are enough. She squeezed it in her mind. After the bell rang, Mariah walked down the corridor toward her next class. Ranger and Nova followed in perfect formation. Some students opened their lockers and froze when they saw the dogs. A few stepped aside quickly. One boy muttered under his breath, "Not a regular school pet." Mariah bowed her head, holding the leashes tighter. She reminded herself that Ranger and Nova were well trained. They would stay calm no matter what happened. She reached her classroom door and took one last look at Ranger and Nova. Their calm eyes met hers. She nodded, proud of them. A teacher at the door smiled when she saw the dogs' badges. "Good morning, Mariah," she said. "I see you brought your partners again." Mariah returned the smile and stepped inside, leaving the dogs in a quiet corner with the other service animals that some students kept for comfort. As the lesson began, Mariah felt a small warmth of hope. The day had been hard, but she had made it through. Ranger and Nova stayed patiently at her side, reminders that she was never alone. And in that moment, Mariah realized that this new beginning might hold more promise than she first thought. She still felt the stares and heard the whispers, but she also felt courage growing inside her chest, quiet, steady, and strong like her faithful dogs. Mariah felt a knot tighten in her stomach as she turned into the hallway after lunch. Ranger and Nova walked beside her, muscles relaxed but alert. The bright lockers and buzzing voices pressed in around her, and she tried to move quickly toward the courtyard entrance. Just then, she heard a clear, mocking laugh. She froze. Ahead, Josh, Kara, and Tyler formed a semicircle near the water fountain. Their eyes followed her like a dark cloud. She swallowed, her throat dry, and Ranger gave a quiet whine of concern. Josh stepped forward first, arms folded. His voice was low and smooth, like he had practiced every cruel word in front of a mirror. "Nice dogs," he said, tone mocking. "You think they'll protect you?" His friends snickered behind him. Kara flicked her hair, studying Mariah with a slow, cold smile. Tyler leaned on the locker next to her, pushing against it until it rattled. Mariah's breath caught. She gripped the leashes so hard her fingers hurt. She tried to speak, but her voice felt small. "I'm just walking to drama club," she managed. Her words trembled, but she held her ground. Ranger's tail stayed still and Nova moved closer. The dog's calm presence gave Mariah a slight boost of courage, but she still felt cornered. Josh took another step forward and jammed his foot against her backpack, sending books tumbling to the floor. The notebooks flipped open, pages scattering across the tiles. Mariah bent down to gather them, cheeks burning. Kara laughed loudly, and Tyler added a shove against Mariah's shoulder. It wasn't hard enough to knock her down, but it was enough to make her stumble. She stayed upright, heart pounding. Ranger let out a low growl, soft but clear. The bullies paused, eyes flicking to the dog. They stiffened, watching the powerful animal with sudden caution. But then Josh scoffed. "Big deal, it's just a dog." Mariah felt tears sting her eyes. She picked up her torn notebook, spine, bent at a harsh angle. She hugged it close, trying to hide her shaking hands. Kara stepped forward, voice sweet like poison. "Why don't you just go play with your puppies?" She pointed at the dogs, voice loud enough for others to hear. Some students nearby glanced over, faces curious. Mariah felt every pair of eyes, like cold needles on her skin. Tyler cracked his knuckles and leaned in closer. "Or maybe you should leave school," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "This town isn't for city girls with guard dogs." He reached out, intending to grab her arm. At that moment, Nova shifted her stance, placing herself slightly in front of Mariah and bristling. Mariah looked down at Nova, eyes wide. Nova's ears were straight up, muscles taut, ready to spring if needed. Ranger matched her sister's posture on the other side. The hallway felt too small now. Mariah's mind spun with memories of her old school, where kids accepted her and her family's dogs without a second thought. Here, everything felt wrong. She remembered her mother's words. "You are enough." Mariah closed her eyes for a second, pulling on that memory like a lifeline. She opened them and looked at the bullies straight in the eye. Her voice was small but steady. "Please stop." Silence fell, broken only by the soft exhale of Mariah's breath. Ranger and Nova remained. Rigid, tails still, all focus on the three bullies. Their patrol instincts flared, and they stood as one silent shield. At that moment, two teachers turned the corner. One teacher quickly moved toward Mariah, another toward the bullies. Josh shoved Mariah's backpack again, but he backed away. When he saw the teachers, Kara swallowed and straightened her posture. Tyler let out a nervous laugh, shifting his weight. The teachers arrived, concern on their faces. Mariah felt relief better than any warm blanket. Ranger and Nova relaxed slightly, though they stayed close. The teacher to Mariah's left knelt, gathering her fallen books. "Are you all right, Mariah?" she asked gently. Mariah nodded, voice still shaking. Josh and his friends hung back, eyes flickering with guilt and embarrassment. Now that adults stood between them, Mariah rose slowly. Ranger nudged her leg, a soft brush of fur that felt like a promise. "You are never alone." The teacher inclined, her head to the bullies. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, voice firm. Josh mumbled something about nothing. The teacher's gaze sharpened, and he cleared his throat. Kara's face turned pink. Tyler averted his eyes. The other teacher called the office on her walkie-talkie, asking for assistance. As the bullies shuffled away under teacher supervision, Mariah felt a swell of pride mixed with sadness. She had stood her ground, and her dogs had stood with her. She gathered her books from the second teacher, who gave her a small, kind smile. The teacher patted Ranger's head and said, "Good dogs." Mariah whispered a quiet thank you. Ranger wagged his tail. Nova licked Mariah's hand. Mariah took a shaky breath, her pulse finally slowing. That afternoon, rumors spread through the school about the confrontation. Some students whispered, nods of respect when Mariah passed them. Others looked away, awkward or unsure. Mariah knew not everyone accepted her, but she also knew she could face each new day. Ranger and Nova walked beside her, wise and patient. Their loyalty reminded her of something more powerful than fear, strength born from love. And with that, Mariah realized that she didn't have to shrink or hide. She could stand tall, just like her brave dogs, and face whatever came next. ChatGPT said, Mariah's heart was still racing the next morning as she walked into school. The sky was pale blue and cool, and a few clouds drifted overhead. Ranger and Nova padded beside her, calm and steady. Mariah's legs felt heavy, as if each step carried the weight of yesterday's fear and triumph. Yet she kept her head up, determined to face the day. In homeroom, whispers followed her entrance. Some students looked at her with new respect, others with curiosity or lingering judgment. Mariah slid into her seat, placing her backpack carefully under her desk. Ranger and Nova settled by the classroom door, alert but relaxed. The teacher greeted them with a soft smile that reached her eyes, and Mariah offered a small grin back. By mid-morning, Mariah tried to focus on math problems, but her mind drifted back to the hallway incident. She tapped her pencil nervously, remembering the bullies' cold faces and the way Ranger's fur had stood on end. She thought of Nova, stepping in front of her when Tyler had reached for her arm. Those dogs had protected her when she felt alone. But she also felt a pang of guilt. She worried if they might be in trouble, or if someone would decide they didn't belong at school. At lunch, Mariah carried Ranger's and Nova's leftovers from home, pieces of chicken and rice neatly packed in small bowls. She entered the courtyard alone. A few students gave her polite nods. Others pretended not to see. She chose a spot under the same oak tree, where she had sat on her first day. Ranger and Nova lay beside her, panting softly in the sun. Mariah smiled and offered them a bit of chicken. They ate hungrily, then rested their heads on her feet. She closed her eyes for a moment and allowed herself to breathe. Memories of her old life surfaced. The busy streets of her city neighborhood, the laughter of friends after school, the warm summer evenings spent at block parties. She had left that behind for her parents' new jobs and this quieter town. She had felt excited at first, but now she felt torn. She longed for the familiar, but needed to build a new place here. Suddenly, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Hey, Mariah." She opened her eyes to see a boy from her English class standing a few feet away. His name was Leo. He always had his nose in a book and rarely spoke to anyone. He held a thick volume of poetry in his hand. Ranger lifted his head at the sight of Leo, ears tilting forward. "Hi," Mariah said softly. She shifted her seat to make room on the bench. Leo sat down, placing his book beside her. He looked at the dogs and offered a shy smile. "Those are some amazing dogs." Mariah felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you," she replied. "They're super smart." Leo nodded. "I'm sorry about yesterday. I saw what happened, and no one should treat you that way." Mariah looked down, surprised by his kindness. "It's okay," she said. "My dogs made me feel safe." Leo studied Ranger's coat. "They have a special look in their eyes, like they really understand you." Mariah scratched behind Nova's ear. "They do. They know when I'm sad or scared." Leo's gaze softened. "I wish I had a friend like that." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, broken only by the rustle of leaves above and distant laughter. Mariah felt a gentle shift inside her. Maybe she could find connection here. Leo pointed to the poetry book. "Do you like poetry?" Mariah shrugged. "I've never tried it." Leo opened the book, flipping to a marked page. He read a few lines softly. "Even in night's darkest hour, a flicker of hope can bloom. In the heart's unyielding power, find courage through the gloom." Mariah listened. Words like sunshine breaking through clouds. When he finished, he closed the book. "I think it means that even when things feel hopeless, you can find strength inside." Mariah nodded. "That's nice." Leo smiled. "You have that strength. You stood up yesterday." Mariah's chest tightened. She looked at her dogs, their eyes calm and loving. "They helped me," she whispered. After lunch, Mariah headed to English class with Leo walking beside her. Ranger and Nova followed close behind. In class, students settled into their seats, and Miss Perkins began the lesson. She announced they would write a short poem about courage. Mariah felt a spark of excitement. Maybe she could try. She opened her notebook and wrote, "When bullies gather round my feet, I feel my heart begin to pound, but two brave friends would pause so. Neat stand firm until the fear's unbound." She paused, reading the lines. Ranger raised his head and looked at her, as if encouraging. Mariah smiled. She added one more stanza. "In darkest hall, their eyes like fire, give strength to stand and face the test. With loyal love that does inspire, I find my voice, I do my best." She scribbled the last word and closed her notebook. When Miss Perkins called on her to share, Mariah's voice was low but steady. She read the poem, feeling her confidence grow with each line. The class was silent when she finished. Some faces showed surprise, others admiration. Miss Perkins clapped softly. Beautiful work, Mariah. You captured true bravery. Mariah's heart swelled. She returned to her seat, and Leo gave her a thumbs up. Ranger and Nova wagged their tails, and Mariah felt warmth in her chest. For the first time, she believed she belonged. After school, Mariah and Leo walked toward the bus stop under the late afternoon sun. Ranger and Nova trotted alongside them. Leo stopped at his front gate. He turned to Mariah. Thanks for letting me walk with you and your dogs. Mariah smiled. Thank you for being kind. Leo hesitated. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. Mariah nodded. I will. Leo lifted his book and waved. See you tomorrow. Mariah watched him go inside his house, feeling a lightness she hadn't felt in days. Ranger and Nova nudged her legs, reminding her they were ready to go home. She clipped their leashes together and headed back to her house. Footsteps easy. At home, Mariah found her parents in the backyard, arranging flower pots. She called out. A greeting. They turned, smiles bright. How was your day? Her father asked. Mariah took a deep breath. Better, she said simply. Her mother set down a watering can and listened. Mariah told them about Leo's kindness, the poetry class, and how Ranger and Nova had helped her feel brave. Her parents hugged her, pride shining in their eyes. That evening, Mariah sat at her desk, reading Leo's poetry book. She copied a few of her favorite lines into her journal. She looked at the photos of her old friends taped above her desk and added a new photo one of her, Ranger, and Nova walking in the courtyard. She scribbled beneath it, New friends, new strength. She stood and stretched, then walked outside to where Ranger and Nova waited by their doghouse. She knelt and hugged each dog. Thank you, she whispered. They licked her face, their way of saying, We're here, always. Mariah returned to her room and turned on her lamp. She opened her notebook and began a new poem. In a town, so small and new I learned to trust what's brave and true. With paws beside and heart so pure, I find my strength. Of this I'm sure. She read the stanzas and smiled. The words felt right, a promise to herself that she would keep going, step by step. Outside, the night was quiet. Inside, Mariah felt a gentle confidence growing. She knew challenges would come again, whispers, stares, maybe even more bullying. But she had learned something powerful. Courage is not the absence of fear, but standing tall in spite of it. And she had two friends who would always stand with her, brave and loyal, ready to step forward when she needed them most. Mariah walked down the hall with her backpack snug on her shoulders, and Ranger and Nova beside her, their leashes held firmly in her hand. The midday sun streamed through the windows, casting bright squares on the shiny floor. She had almost made it past the water fountain when she saw them again, Josh, Kara, and Tyler, waiting in a small cluster by her locker. Their eyes sharpened at her approach, and they wore the same cruel grins as before. Her stomach tightened, but she lifted her chin and took a deep breath. Ranger's muscles rippled under his coat, and Nova's ears pricked up. Mariah felt the familiar safety their presence gave her. The trio stepped forward as Mariah came closer, and once more they formed a semicircle, hemming her in. Kara crossed her arms, leaning against the locker. Tyler shifted from one foot to the other. Josh cracked his knuckles. Mariah's heart pounded, but she refused to turn away. She reminded herself of the mornings filled with poetry and friendship, the small victories that had given her courage. Hey again, Josh said, voice smooth and cold. He held out a single finger as if counting. Round 2. His friends laughed, and Kara took a step closer, narrowing the space between them and Mariah. She glanced at Ranger and Nova, their steady dark eyes watching every movement. She felt the soft tug of Nova's collar as if the dog were urging her to stand her ground. She swallowed and spoke up, her voice clear. "Leave me alone." Tyler snorted. "Or what? Those mutts will bite us?" He sneered at the dogs, leaning even closer. Mariah's grip on the leashes tightened, and Ranger let out a low, controlled growl. The single sound filled the corridor like a warning bell. Students passing by paused mid-stride, their chatter fading to quiet. Ranger's fur along his back bristled, and Nova shifted forward, placing herself protectively at Mariah's side. The bullies froze for a heartbeat as they registered the change. Kara's face flickered with doubt. She glanced at her friends, then back at the dogs. "They're just big dogs," she said, voice wavering. But the growl grew louder, deeper, and the dogs stood tall, heads high, bodies firm. It was no longer a playful warning. It was a promise. Mariah's chest rose and fell with her steady breaths. She looked at each bully in turn. "Go away," she said softly but firmly. "I'm not scared of you." For a long moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by Ranger's quiet rumble. The dog's presence seemed to fill the air, creating a barrier that no one dared cross. Students lined the lockers on either side, their faces wide with surprise. Some held their phones up, ready to record. Others watched, frozen. Mariah felt her cheeks flush, not with shame but with a strange pride. Her dog stood with her, brave and loyal, and in that bravery she felt stronger than she ever had before. Finally, Tyler swallowed and looked away. Josh kicked at the tiles, his bravado slipping. Kara's arms fell to her sides. None of them moved forward again. The trio backed up slowly, eyes fixed on Ranger and Nova, then on Mariah. "Fine," Josh muttered, pulling the others back. They stumbled away down the hall, still glancing over their shoulders. When they reached the corner, they turned and ran, their laughter hollow and forced. Mariah watched them go, feeling the weight on her shoulders lift. Ranger relaxed, the fur along his back settling, and Nova sat down beside Mariah, panting lightly. Mariah sank to her knees and hugged each dog, burying her face in their fur. "Thank you," she whispered. Other students gathered around, curiosity turning into respect. A girl Mariah had never spoken to before stepped forward. "That was amazing," she said. "Your dogs are incredible." Mariah looked up and managed a small smile. "I'm proud of them." A teacher emerged from a nearby classroom, drawn by the commotion. She approached slowly, hands on her hips but eyes soft. She knelt to scratch Nova behind the ears and said, "Good dogs." "Good job, Mariah." Mariah straightened and nodded, her voice catching. "Thank you, Miss Carter." The teacher patted her shoulder gently, then addressed the watching students. "Let's give Mariah and her service dogs some space." The crowd parted, clearing a respectful path. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Mariah returned to her classes, Ranger and Nova by her side in every hallway. Whispers followed her, but they were different now. Words like brave and strong mingled with dog handler and service animal. In art class, her friend Sophia gave her a thumbs up and a shy smile. In science, a boy named Malik offered to help carry her supplies. Mariah's heart fluttered with gratitude. She realized that courage did more than protect. It inspired. Her stand had changed how people saw her, not as an outsider with strange pets, but as someone worthy of respect. After school, Mariah walked home under the warm glow of the setting sun. Ranger and Nova trailed at her heels, their leashes loose. In her hand, She stopped at the park bench near her house and sat for a moment, stroking Nova's head. She thought of the fear that had gripped her just an hour ago, and beamed at how far she had come. Her dogs rested their heads on her lap, eyes soft with trust. Mariah whispered, "We did it," and they wiggled in contentment. When she reached home, her parents were waiting at the front porch. Her mother looked into her eyes and saw something new, quiet confidence, tempered by kindness. Her father ruffled her hair. "You handled that well," he said. Mariah nodded. They backed off. She explained everything as they walked inside. The bullies, the growl, the frozen faces. Her parents listened, pride shining in their eyes. Her mother turned to Ranger and Nova. "You two are true heroes." The dogs wagged their tails and barked softly in reply. That night, Mariah lay in bed and replayed the day's events in her mind. She thought of the hall, bright with sunlight and filled with onlookers. She remembered Ranger's growl, Nova's stance, and the way the bullies had stumbled back. She understood now that fear could be met with strength, and strength could come from love and loyalty. She closed her eyes, a gentle smile on her lips, and drifted into sleep, knowing that whatever tomorrow brought, she would face it just as her dogs had, with calm courage and unwavering loyalty. That afternoon, Mariah returned home on foot, the late sun painting the sky in gentle pinks and oranges. Ranger and Nova walked at her side, their leashes loose and tails relaxed. She carried her backpack on one shoulder and held the leash handles, in her hand, feeling a calm pride in each step. The air was warm and the soft breeze rustled the leaves overhead. Mariah looked at her dogs and whispered, "We did it again today." They glanced up at her with bright eyes as if to say, "Yes, we did." Inside the house, the familiar scent of dinner cooking drifted through the hall. Her mother stood at the stove, stirring a pot of stew, while her father set the table. Mariah called out a greeting and leaned down to hug Ranger's neck, then Nova's. The dogs nuzzled her, happy to be home. Her father smiled when he saw her calm and confident face. "How was the rest of your day?" he asked. Mariah shrugged, a soft grin spreading across her face. "Good," she said simply. "I think things are changing." At the table, her mother placed steaming bowls in front of them. Mariah took a bite and felt warm flavors fill her mouth. Beef, potatoes, carrots, all cooked just right. She thought of the smiles she had received from classmates who once ignored her. She thought of Leo waving goodbye at the bus stop. She thought of the new friend Sophia, who had offered to help her carry art supplies. Each small moment felt like a gift. After dinner, Mariah helped clear the plates and load the dishwasher. Ranger and Nova lay in the living room, heads resting on their paws. Mariah sat on the floor beside them and ran her fingers through their soft fur. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she told them. Ranger blinked slowly. Nova closed her eyes, both content. Mariah felt her heart swell with gratitude. Later, she went to her room to work on her journal. She turned on her desk lamp and opened the notebook she used to write her thoughts and poems. The page for today was blank, and she picked up her favorite pen. She wrote the date at the top, July 5th, 2025. Underneath, she began to write, "Today, I felt something new. I felt respect from people who once ignored me. I felt that I belong here." She paused and looked at a small photo taped above her desk. It was a picture of her, Ranger, and Nova on the first day of school. She pressed her finger against the glass of the frame and wrote another line. "My friends are not only in books or in class. My best friends walk on 4 paws." She smiled at her words. Then she added a short poem at the bottom of the page. "Brave hearts stand with steady paws, they guard my steps without a pause. In halls of stone or skies of blue, their love reminds me who is true." She closed the notebook and tucked it under her arm. As she got ready for bed, she thought about tomorrow. She knew she would still walk the same halls, pass by the same lockers, and maybe see the same faces. But now she carried something stronger. Than fear, she carried courage born from loyalty, respect, and love. That night, Ranger and Nova slept in their crate at the foot of her bed. Mariah lay under the covers, reading by the soft light of her phone. She scrolled through messages from her old friends in the city. They asked if she missed them, if the town was quiet, if she had met anyone new. She typed quick replies, telling them about Leo, the poetry class, and her brave dogs who stood by her. She felt a small pang for her old life, but it was tinged with excitement for the new one she was building. When she finished, she set the phone aside and looked at the glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to her ceiling. Ranger and Nova's steady breathing reached her ears. Mariah closed her eyes and thought of the first day, when she had been scared and shy, and of today, when she had found her voice. She whispered a quiet thank you to her dogs and to herself for not giving up. In the days that followed, more changes came. In drama club, students who once ignored her started to ask for her ideas during rehearsals. They listened when she suggested a scene change. She felt proud that her voice mattered. In art class, Sophia invited her to sit together at lunch. They sketched side by side under the oak tree. Mariah showed Sophia how to draw Ranger and Nova. Sophia laughed when Ranger tried to nibble on her pencil. Mariah laughed too. A bright, free laugh. In English class, Miss Perkins assigned another poem project. This time, Mariah chose to write about friendship. She wrote, "True friends may have 2 legs or 4. They hold you safe, they guide you. Sure, they lift you when your heart feels low. They help you find the courage to grow." When she read it aloud, the class clapped, and Leo gave her a thumbs up. Mariah sat down and felt her cheeks warm, not from shame but from happiness. One afternoon, Mariah and Leo walked through the courtyard after school. Ranger and Nova joined them, tails wagging. Leo knelt down to pet Nova. "They're my heroes," Mariah said. "I don't know what I'd do without them." Leo smiled. "I think they've taught all of us something. You don't always see who can be brave, but you feel it when it matters." Mariah nodded. She felt lucky to have Leo as a friend too. Word of Mariah's dogs and her courage reached the principal's office. A few weeks later, she was invited to speak at a school assembly about service animals and bullying. Mariah stood. On the stage, Ranger and Nova in their vests at her sides. Hundreds of students and teachers filled the auditorium. Mariah's heart beat fast, but Ranger nudged her leg, and Nova leaned against her ankle. Mariah took a deep breath and began, "When I came here, I felt alone and afraid. I thought people would never understand me or my dogs. But then I learned that courage can come in different shapes and sizes. It can be a kind word from a friend. It can be a poem we share. And it can be 2 loyal dogs who stand by us when we need it most." She told them about the hallway, the bullies, and how Ranger and Nova had stepped forward. She spoke about respect, how it grows when we show kindness and courage. When she finished, the auditorium was still for a heartbeat, then erupted in applause. Mariah saw the faces of students who once laughed at her, now clapping to show they cared. She felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. Afterward, teachers and students came up to thank her. Some asked to pet Ranger and Nova. Others wanted to know how they could help animals in their own lives. Mariah answered each question with a calm smile. She realized that her story, her true story, had touched people, and that gave her a new purpose: to help others find courage and respect in their own lives. That night, as Mariah lay in bed, she thought of all that had changed. She no longer felt like the new girl with the big guard dogs. She felt like someone who belonged. She had friends, respect, and the love of her faithful companions. She thought of her parents, proud and supportive. She thought of Leo and Sophia. She thought of the students whose eyes held admiration now, instead of fear or mockery. Mariah closed her eyes and slept soundly, knowing the next day would bring its own challenges and joys. But she was ready. She had learned that true life is full of ups and downs, but with courage and loyalty we can face anything. And as she drifted into her dreams, Ranger and Nova lay at her side, guardians of her sleep and her heart, always ready to step forward when she needed them most.